I stood in the gleaming lobby of Maxwell Enterprises, mop in hand, watching the executives hurry past in their designer suits. None of them gave me a second glance. To them, I was just another member of the cleaning staff, invisible in my gray uniform. If they only knew that tomorrow, I would be sitting in their boardroom, not as a janitor, but as their new CEO. My name is Marcus Chen, and I've spent the last 5 years maintaining this elaborate deception. Not just here at Maxwell Enterprises, but with my entire family. They still think I'm the family failure, the one who wasted his computer science degree to become a janitor. What they don't know is that I'm the founder and CEO of Quantum Solutions, a tech company worth over $50 million. The irony wasn't lost on me as I watched my cousin David stroke through the lobby, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble floor. He was Maxwell Enterprises' rising star, their youngest VP at 32. Every family gathering, he made sure everyone knew about his latest promotion, his new sports car, his luxury apartment. I just nod and smile, pretending to be impressed while he patronizingly offered to put in a good word for me with HR. "Hey, janitor." David's voice cut through my thoughts. "The men's room on the 4th floor needs attention." Chop chop. I gripped my mop tighter, swallowing my pride. "Right away, sir." As I pushed my cart toward the elevator, I could hear him chuckling with his colleagues. "That's my cousin, you know. Always told him to apply himself, but some people just don't have what it takes." If he only knew that tomorrow, Quantum Solutions would be completing its takeover of Maxwell Enterprises. After months of quiet stock acquisition and strategic planning, we finally secured enough shares to gain controlling interest. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. But first, I had to survive tonight's family reunion. The annual Morrison family gathering was always an exercise in humility. Held at my Aunt Patricia's sprawling mansion in the suburbs, it was less a family celebration and more a competition of achievements. As I parked my deliberately modest Honda Civic in the driveway, I could already see the lineup of luxury vehicles: David's Porsche, my sister Olivia's Mercedes, Uncle Robert's Tesla. I straightened my intentionally cheap suit and walked inside, bracing myself for the usual barrage of condescension and helpful career advice. "Marcus." Aunt Patricia's voice carried across the marble foyer. "We were just talking about career growth. Come join us, maybe you can pick up some tips." The living room was arranged like a corporate hierarchy, the successful family members occupying the premium spots on the plush sofas, while the less accomplished were relegated to the dining chairs brought in as overflow seating. I took my usual place on the periphery next to my second cousin who worked as a high school teacher, another family disappointment. "So Marcus," David leaned forward, swirling his expensive scotch, still cleaning up at Maxwell. "You know, if you just finished that coding bootcamp I recommended, you might have made something of yourself by now." I thought about the 3 patents in my name, the revolutionary software platform I'd developed, the team of over 200 brilliant engineers who reported to me at Quantum. "The janitorial work pays the bills," I said mildly. My sister Olivia, an investment banker, shook her head. "I just don't understand how you can be satisfied with that life. Remember when we were kids? You were always so good with computers. What happened?" What happened was that I discovered a fundamental flaw in cybersecurity systems while still in college. Instead of following the family's prescribed path of climbing corporate ladders, I'd spent 2 years in my apartment developing a solution. They thought I was depressed, failing at life. In reality, I was building the foundation of what would become Quantum Solutions. "Not everyone is cut out for success," Uncle Robert declared, straightening his Italian silk tie. "Some people just lack ambition." I hid my smile behind my water glass. Uncle Robert was Maxwell Enterprises' CFO, and tomorrow he'd be one of the first to learn about the takeover. I wondered if he'd still think I lacked ambition then. "At least he's honest work," my mother chimed in, always trying to find a silver lining. "And he keeps his apartment clean." The room erupted in laughter at what had become a running family joke. Yes, of course the janitor keeps his place clean. They'd never visited my real home, a penthouse overlooking the city. The small apartment they knew about was just for show, part of the elaborate facade I'd maintained while building my company. Speaking of Maxwell, David set down his scotch, his expression turning serious. "Did you hear about tomorrow's board meeting? Rumor has it some tech company is trying to take over. Quantum something." I kept my face carefully neutral. "Oh, Nothing to worry about, Uncle Robert waved his hand dismissively. These young tech startups, they think they can just walk in and take over established companies. We'll shut it down before it gets any traction. If he only knew that Quantum Solutions had been methodically acquiring Maxwell shares through various shell companies for the past year. By tomorrow morning, we would own 51% of the company. Actually, I said, unable to resist, I heard Quantum Solutions is doing quite well. Their cybersecurity platform is revolutionary. David snorted. What would you know about it? You're a janitor. I read the tech blogs during my breaks, I shrugged, thinking about the Forbes cover story about me that would be released tomorrow. They'd been sitting on it for weeks, waiting for the takeover to be announced. The conversation moved on to more important matters. David's new yacht, Olivia's promotion, Uncle Robert's country club membership. I sat quietly, observing my family in their bubble of self-importance, knowing it would all change tomorrow. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, my COO. Everything's set for tomorrow. Board members notified. Press release ready. You sure about this? I looked around the room at my family, still laughing about my poor life choices. Yes, I was sure. After 5 years of hiding in plain sight, it was time to show them exactly who I was. The next morning, I arrived at Maxwell Enterprises at my usual time, 6 a.m. But today, instead of pushing my cleaning cart, I carried a sleek briefcase containing the takeover documents. I'd already changed into a custom-tailored Tom Ford suit in my private office on the top floor of the building next door, where Quantum Solutions was headquartered. Sarah met me in the lobby, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Ready for this? I adjusted my tie, thinking about last night's family reunion. More than ready. The Maxwell Enterprises boardroom occupied the entire top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. By 8:45 a.m., the room was filling with board members, executives, and legal teams. I watched through the security feed as David arrived, radiating confidence, followed by Uncle Robert, who was frantically checking his phone. Mr. Chen, my assistant Thomas, appeared at my shoulder. They're all here. I nodded, straightening my cuffs. Time to make an entrance. At precisely 9 a.m., I walked into the boardroom. The reaction was immediate. David, halfway through some joke about the takeover attempt, froze mid-sentence. Uncle Robert's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. Marcus, David's voice cracked. What are you doing here? The cleaning staff isn't allowed in board meetings. I walked calmly to the head of the table, setting down my briefcase. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcus Chen, CEO of Quantum Solutions. The silence was absolute. Uncle Robert's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. This is ridiculous, David finally sputtered. You're a janitor. You clean toilets. I smiled, nodding to Sarah, who began distributing documents. Actually, I was never a janitor. That was just a cover while we acquired controlling interest in Maxwell Enterprises. As of this morning, Quantum Solutions owns 51% of your company's shares. Uncle Robert lunged for the documents, his hands shaking as he flipped through the pages. This can't be legal. You can't be. The CEO of a $50 million tech company? I finished for him. The same company that holds 3 major cybersecurity patents. The one that's been featured in Tech Weekly as one of the most innovative startups of the decade. I pulled out the morning's copy of Forbes, my face on the cover. That Quantum Solutions? David had gone pale, no doubt remembering every condescending comment, every joke at my expense. But your apartment, your car. We're props, I said simply, just like the janitor's uniform. Tell me, cousin, did you ever wonder why a janitor had full access to every floor of the building? Why security never questioned my presence in executive areas after hours? The board members were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Many of them had seen me cleaning their offices, never bothering to look beyond the gray uniform. As of now, I continued, I'm assuming control of Maxwell Enterprises. There will be some changes in leadership. I looked directly at Uncle Robert, starting with the executive team. Uncle Robert shot to his feet. You can't do this. I'm calling your mother. I couldn't help but laugh. Go ahead. She's probably still congratulating herself on having one successful child, Olivia. Wait until she sees the Forbes article. Just then, as if on cue, phones around the room started buzzing. The story had broken. I watched as board members and executives pulled out their phones, their expressions changing as they read about the brilliant young CEO who had built a tech empire while working undercover as a janitor. David was still shaking his head in disbelief. 5 years? You spent 5 years pretending to be a janitor just for this moment? No, I corrected him. I spent 5 years building a successful company while you and the rest of the family were too busy looking down on me to notice. The janitor thing? That was just to ensure no one interfered while we acquired shares in Maxwell Enterprises. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. You just saw Forbes. Call me. Followed immediately by one from my mother. Marcus, what is going on? Your Aunt Patricia is having a fit. I set my phone aside and addressed the room. Now, shall we discuss the future of Maxwell Enterprises? I have some ideas about modernizing your cybersecurity infrastructure. The next few hours were a blur of signatures, legal discussions, and shocked revelations. By lunch, word had spread throughout the building. The cleaning staff, my former colleagues who had always treated me with kindness, were among the first to congratulate me. Many of them knew something was different about me, they just hadn't known what. Around 2 p.m., my family started arriving at the office, demanding explanations. Aunt Patricia nearly fainted when security escorted her to my new office, the CEO's suite with its view of the city skyline. But you're a janitor, she kept repeating, staring at my nameplate. Was a janitor, I corrected her. Now I'm your boss. Well, technically, I'm David's boss's boss's boss. My mother arrived last, clutching the Forbes magazine. She looked like she'd been crying. Why didn't you tell us? I leaned back in my chair, thinking about all the family dinners where they'd mocked my poor life choices, all the reunions where they treated me like a cautionary tale. Would you have believed me? I asked quietly, or would you have tried to control it like everything else? Tell me how to run my company? Push me to give jobs to family members? She had no answer for that. Over the next few weeks, the story of the undercover CEO went viral. Business magazines hailed it as a brilliant strategic move, gaining inside access to a target company while keeping the competition completely unaware. My family, meanwhile, had to adjust to a new reality. David was demoted to middle management, where he finally had to prove his actual worth without family connections. Uncle Robert took early retirement rather than work under his janitor nephew. Aunt Patricia stopped hosting family reunions, claiming she needed time to process everything. But the biggest change was in how they looked at me. Gone were the condescending smiles, the patronizing advice, the jokes about my career choices. Now they looked at me with a mixture of respect, fear, and regret. 1 month after the takeover, I hosted a company-wide meeting to announce some changes. As I stood at the podium, looking out over the assembled employees, I spotted my old cleaning cart tucked away in a corner of the lobby. I smiled, remembering all the nights I pushed it through these halls, quietly building my empire while everyone else was too busy looking down their noses to notice. Success, I've learned, doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it pushes a mop, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And sometimes the best revenge isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. My phone buzzed with another text from Olivia. Family dinner at Mom's this Sunday. Please come, we have a lot to make up for. I typed a quick reply. I'll be there, but this time, I'm wearing a suit. I stared at the email notification glowing on my phone screen, a slight smile playing at my lips. Another desperate message from my father's company, Anderson Global Technologies, their third this week. The subject line was always different, but the underlying message remained the same. They needed my help. My name is Emma Anderson, and 10 years ago, my parents made what they thought was a simple choice. They chose my twin brother, Ethan, to inherit the family business. After all, he was the natural leader, the one with the real business sense. I was just the quiet twin who spent too much time analyzing market trends and studying emerging technologies. Ms. Anderson. My assistant's voice pulled me from my thoughts. The quarterly earnings report is ready for your review, and Google's acquisition team sent over the updated proposal. I nodded, turning away from the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office. The Seattle skyline sparkled beneath the morning sun, a far cry from the small garage where I'd started my company 5 years ago. Thanks, Alice. Just leave them on my desk. I picked up my father's email again, reading it more carefully this time. Emma, we need to discuss a potential strategic partnership. Anderson Global's board believes a merger between our companies could create significant synergies. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Dad, strategic partnership. I almost laughed. That's what they were calling it now. 6 months ago, it had been market collaboration. Before that, joint venture opportunities. They were running out of euphemisms for what they really wanted, a bailout. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. Emma, darling, her voice carried that familiar mix of authority and manipulation. Did you get your father's email? We should really discuss this as a family. I closed my eyes, memories flooding back. The family dinner 10 years ago when they'd announced their decision. The way they framed it as if they were doing me a favor. Ethan has the natural leadership qualities the company needs, my father had declared, swirling his expensive scotch. He understands people, knows how to command a room. You're too analytical, Emma. Too focused on the technical details. That's not what a CEO needs to be. My mother had reached across the table, patting my hand with well-practiced sympathy. Besides, sweetheart, you've always been more comfortable behind the scenes. This way, you can support your brother without all the pressure of running the company. I remembered Ethan's smug smile, the way he'd straightened his shoulders, already practicing his executive posture. Don't worry, sis. I'll make sure there's always a place for you in the company. That night, I'd gone home to my apartment and cried, not from sadness, but from pure, burning frustration. They'd never seen me, never really understood what I was capable of. To them, I was just the quiet twin, the careful one, the one who didn't fit their image of a business leader. Emma, my mother's voice brought me back to the present. Are you there? Yes, Mom. I got the email. I kept my voice neutral, professional, but any potential partnership would need to go through proper channels. Have your team contact our corporate development office. Oh, Emma, she sighed. Why do you always have to make things so formal? We're family. Family. The word hit differently now. Yes, we are. And 10 years ago, our family made a very clear decision about leadership. I'm just honoring that decision. You're still holding on to that. Sweetheart, we did what we thought was best. And look at you now, you've done so well for yourself with your little tech company. My little tech company that was now worth $4.2 billion. Anderson Global's market cap had dropped to less than half that under Ethan's leadership. Mom, I need to go. I have a board meeting in 10 minutes. It wasn't true, but she didn't need to know that. Just think about it, please. Your brother's having a hard time. The market conditions, the new competitors. It's been challenging. I ended the call, turning back to the window. Challenging didn't begin to describe Ethan's situation. Under his leadership, Anderson Global had missed every major tech trend of the last decade. While they were still pushing outdated enterprise software, I built Nova Technologies into a leader in artificial intelligence and machine learning. The irony wasn't lost on me. The technical details they dismissed as a weakness had become my greatest strength. While Ethan was perfecting his executive image, I was studying the technologies that would reshape the industry. My intercom buzzed. Ms. Anderson, the team from Tesla is here for the partnership discussion. I straightened my blazer, pushing thoughts of family drama aside. Send them in. As I walked to the conference room, I passed the wall of achievements that lined our main hallway. Industry awards, patent certificates, magazine covers featuring my face. The Queen of AI. Tech's Rising Star, 30 under 30. Each one a quiet rebuttal to those who'd underestimated me. But the most satisfying article was the most recent one. Anderson Global struggles as Nova Technologies soars. The subtitle was particularly sweet. Twin CEOs, Divergent Paths. The Tesla executives rose as I entered the room, eager to discuss implementing Nova's AI systems in their next generation of vehicles. This was what real business leadership looked like, not commanding a room with charisma, but creating something so valuable that the room came to you. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Ethan. Come on, Em. Help me out here. For old time's sake. I put the phone away without responding. Old time's sake. The old times were exactly why I'd built Nova Technologies. Every dismissal, every underestimation, every patronizing pat on the head have fueled my determination. They'd chosen their CEO 10 years ago. Now it was time for them to live with that choice. But as I began my presentation to the Tesla team, I couldn't help but smile slightly, because the best part? This was just the beginning. Anderson Global's desperation for a merger was about to teach my family a very expensive lesson about underestimating the quiet twin. The weekly executive meeting at Nova Technologies had just wrapped up when Alice appeared at my door again. "Your brother's here." I looked up from my laptop surprised. Ethan had never visited my office before. His pride wouldn't allow it. "He doesn't have an appointment. He says it's urgent. Family business." Alice's tone carried a hint of disapproval. She'd been with me since the early days, working late nights in that garage as we built Nova from scratch. She knew our family history. I sighed, closing my laptop. "Send him in." Ethan strode into my office like he owned it, the same way he walked everywhere. But something was different. His designer suit couldn't hide the tension in his shoulders, the slight shadows under his eyes. Running Anderson Global into the ground was finally taking its toll. "Nice view," he said, gesturing to the Seattle skyline. "Much better than that garage you started in. Remember when Dad said you were wasting your time?" "I remember everything, Ethan." I kept my voice neutral. "What do you want?" He turned to face me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the brother I'd grown up with, before the competition, before the bitterness. "We need to talk about the merger." "There is no merger discussion. I already told Mom." "Our stock dropped another 15% yesterday," he cut in. "The board is talking about replacing me." I leaned back in my chair. "And this concerns Nova Technologies how?" "Come on, Em." He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "You know exactly how your AI systems could transform our business. Together, we could. Together." I couldn't help but laugh. "Now you want to work together. Where was this collaborative spirit 10 years ago?" His face hardened. "That's not fair. I didn't ask for them to choose me." "No, but you didn't exactly protest, did you?" I stood up, walking to the window. "You were so sure you were the right choice. The natural leader. How's that working out?" "Is that what this is about? Revenge?" He stepped closer. "You built all this just to prove a point." I turned to face him. "I built this because I saw where the industry was going while you were busy playing CEO. I built this because every time you and Dad dismissed my technical details as irrelevant, I knew you were wrong." "Fine, you were right." His composure cracked. "Is that what you want to hear? You're the better CEO. You won. But there are 5,000 people who depend on Anderson Global for their livelihood. Are you going to punish them just to spite me?" That hit home. He knew it would. He was my twin after all. We'd grown up learning each other's weak spots. "Those people deserve better leadership," I said quietly, "and you know it." Ethan slumped into one of my visitor chairs. "The board's giving me 1 month to turn things around. After that," he looked up at me. "Help me, Em. Please. Not for me, but for Dad's legacy." I walked back to my desk, pressing the intercom. "Alice, please bring in the Horizon folder." Ethan straightened. "What's that?" 6 months ago, I had our strategy team prepare a complete analysis of what acquiring Anderson Global would look like. I took the folder from Alice. "Not a merger. An acquisition." His face paled. "You've been planning this?" "I've been preparing for it." "There's a difference." I slid the folder across the desk. Page 12 outlines the leadership transition plan. Page 15 details the technology integration roadmap. He opened the folder with shaking hands. "You want to fire me." "I want to fix what you broke." I sat down again. "The board gets what they want, new leadership. The employees keep their jobs. The company survives, but not as equals, Ethan. Nova acquires Anderson Global at current market value, and I become CEO of both companies. Dad will never agree to this. Dad's not the majority shareholder anymore. You've been diluting family ownership for years to keep the company afloat." I pointed to page 3. "We've been quietly buying those shares through subsidiaries." Ethan stared at me, realization dawning. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day they chose you." The words came out before I could stop them. He closed the folder slowly. "I'll need time to review this with the board." "You have 48 hours. I picked up my phone, signaling the end of the meeting. "After that, we go hostile. And trust me, he don't want that." He stood up, straightening his tie, a nervous habit from childhood. "You've changed, Em." "No, I haven't. That's what none of you ever understood." I met his gaze steadily. "I was always this person, You just couldn't see it. After he left, I sat in silence for a long moment. Then I picked up my phone and dialed a familiar number. Alice? Schedule a dinner reservation for tonight. 4 people. I paused. And contact our PR team. Tell them to be ready by tomorrow afternoon. It was time to have one last family dinner, but this time, I would be the one making the announcements. Sometimes the quiet twin speaks the loudest. It's funny how $80 can change your life. Not in the way you might think, not by winning a lottery or making a lucky investment. No, $80 was the price of my freedom, though I didn't know it at the time. I was 23, fresh out of college, working my first real job at a small tech startup. The pay wasn't great, but I loved the work. I was learning, growing, dreaming of building something of my own one day. My parents, though, they had different ideas about success. Olivia, we need to talk. My mother's voice crackled through the phone one evening. I was still at the office, debugging code that would later become the foundation of my company. Your father and I are a bit short this month. We need $80 for the cable bill. It wasn't the first time they called asking for money. Ever since I'd started working, they treated my bank account like their personal emergency fund. 20 here, 50 there, small amounts that added up to thousands over time. Mom, I can't. I said, my voice firm but gentle. I've already helped with the electricity bill last week, and the car payment before that. I need to save for my own future. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then came my father's voice. He must have been listening on speaker. Your own future, he scoffed. What future? Working at that worthless startup. We put you through college, and this is how you repay us. I closed my eyes, remembering the student loans I was still paying off. Loans that were in my name, not theirs. Dad, I paid for college myself. I'm still paying for it. After everything we've done for you, my mother chimed in, her voice rising. We gave you a home, raised you, and now you won't even help with $80. What kind of daughter are you? I felt something snap inside me. Years of guilt, manipulation, and financial drain crystallized into a moment of clarity. I am a daughter who needs to stand on her own feet, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. And you are parents who should do the same. How dare you? My father exploded. If you don't send that money right now, you're dead to us. Dead, you hear me? I gripped my phone tighter, tears threatening to spill. I hear you, Dad. I hear you clearly for the first time. Then make your choice, my mother added, her voice cold. Your family or your precious money. I took a deep breath, thinking about the code on my screen, the dreams in my heart, and the future I wanted to build. I choose my future, I said quietly. Then you're no longer our daughter, my father spat. Don't ever contact us again. The line went dead. That night, I stayed late at the office, pouring my pain into my work. The code I wrote through my tears would later become the core algorithm of my company's first product. But I didn't know that then. All I knew was that I'd lost my family over $80. The next few months were a blur of work and loneliness. My parents kept their word. They blocked my number, returned my letters unopened, and told the entire extended family that I was dead to them. My cousins, aunts, and uncles who had always praised my academic achievements and career choices suddenly treated me like a pariah. But something unexpected happened. Without the constant drain on my resources and emotional energy, I started to thrive. The small savings I managed to build up became my seed money. The extra hours I used to spend dealing with my parents' financial emergencies went into developing my own software. My startup noticed. 6 months after that fateful phone call, my boss called me into his office. Olivia, the algorithm you developed, it's revolutionary. We want to make it the centerpiece of our new product line, and we want you to lead the project. I threw myself into the work. Every rejected family dinner invitation became an extra hour of coding. Every holiday spent alone turned into a new feature development. The pain of being disowned fueled my determination to succeed. A year later, I had a choice to make. The company wanted to buy my algorithm outright for a substantial sum. It was more money than I'd ever seen, enough to pay off my student loans and still have plenty left over. But something told me to hold on to it. This wasn't just code anymore. It was my ticket to independence. Instead of selling, I made a bold proposal. I would start my own company with my algorithm as the foundation and partner with them instead. To my surprise, they agreed. More than that, they invested. Olive Tech was born in a small office with 3 employees: me, a junior developer I'd mentored, and a sales rep who believed in my vision. We worked impossible hours, lived on coffee and determination, and poured everything we had into making it work. The first year was brutal. I lost count of how many times I nearly gave up, how many nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if my parents were right about me. But each morning, I got up and tried again. Then came our first major client, then another. And another. By the end of year 2, we had 20 employees. By year 3, we had to move to a bigger office. Our software was doing things nobody else in the industry had thought possible, solving problems others hadn't even recognized yet. I kept tabs on my family through LinkedIn and occasional updates from the few relatives who still spoke to me. I learned that my father had been promoted to middle management at his company. My mother still worked part-time at the local library. They still lived in the same house, still complained about money, still told everyone who would listen about their ungrateful daughter who abandoned them. Little did they know that the small startup they dismissed was about to become one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. Little did they know that their worthless daughter was on the verge of something extraordinary. But they would find out soon enough, because after 5 years of silence, after building my company from nothing to the edge of a major breakthrough, I was about to appear on national television. And I knew they would be watching. The morning of my television appearance, I stood in front of my full-length mirror, adjusting my blazer. The woman staring back at me was a far cry from the broken 23-year-old who had lost her family over $80. My clothes were tailored now, my posture confident, my eyes clear and focused. "Miss Carter, the car is here," my assistant, Michael, called from the living room of my penthouse apartment. The drive to the studio was surreal. CNBC had reached out after Olive Tech's latest innovation hit the market, an AI-driven software solution that was revolutionizing supply chain management. Our company valuation had just hit $80 million, a number that felt like poetic justice. "Just remember," Michael said, reviewing our prep notes, "they'll want to focus on the technology, but they'll probably ask about your background too. Are you sure you want to tell the whole story?" I nodded. It's time. The studio lights were bright, the makeup artist's final touches perfect. As I sat across from the interviewer, Sarah Chin, I thought about my parents' small TV in their living room. They never missed the morning business news. Today we're joined by Olivia Carter, founder and CEO of Olive Tech, the company that's been making waves in the tech industry. Sarah began. "Olivia, your company just hit an $80 million valuation. That's impressive for any startup, but especially one that began just 5 years ago. Tell us how it all started." I took a deep breath. "Actually, Sarah, it started with $80. Not in the way you might think, not as an investment or a loan. It started when I lost my family over $80. The interview went quiet. This wasn't in the prep notes. "Would you elaborate on that?" Sarah leaned forward, intrigued. So I told the story. All of it. The constant financial drain, the manipulation, the final phone call, the disarmament. I spoke about building something from nothing, about turning pain into motivation. When they cut me off, they thought they were punishing me, I said, looking directly into the camera. Instead, they set me free. That $80 they demanded, it would have been gone in a moment. Instead, it became the seed of an $80 million company. My phone started buzzing before I even left the studio. First came the text from my cousin Sophia, the only family member who had stayed in touch. "OMG, Aunt Linda and Uncle Dave, my parents, are losing it. They're calling everyone in the family." Then came the calls, dozens of them from blocked numbers. I knew who they were from. I handed my phone to Michael. "Screen these for me, please." Back at the office, my team greeted me with applause. They all knew my story now, understood why I pushed so hard, worked so long. But I barely had time to acknowledge their support before Michael rushed in, his face pale. "Your parents are in the lobby." I stood by my office window, looking out at the city skyline I had helped reshape. "Send them up." They burst through my office door moments later. My mother, wearing the same pearl necklace she'd had for 20 years. My father, his face red with a mixture of anger and something else. Was it embarrassment? "How dare you?" My mother started. "How dare you air our private business on national television?" I turned slowly. "Private business? You mean the story you've been telling everyone for 5 years?" About your ungrateful daughter who abandoned her family? We came to give you a chance to apologize, my father cut in. To make things right. I laughed softly. Make things right? You mean now that I'm worth something to you? We're your parents, my mother cried. We gave you everything. No, I said firmly. You gave me an ultimatum over $80. And now you're here, not because you miss me, not because you're sorry, but because I'm successful. My father's face softened slightly. Princess, let's put this behind us. We're family. We should be celebrating your success together. My success? I walked to my desk and pulled out an old envelope. You mean the success you said I'd never have? The dreams you called worthless? I slid the envelope across the desk. Here's your $80, with 5 years interest. They stared at the check, their faces a mix of shock and shame. But we don't want your money, my mother whispered. We want our daughter back. The daughter you had doesn't exist anymore, I replied. You killed her the night you chose $80 over her. The woman standing before you, she built herself from the ashes of your rejection. Please, my father's voice cracked. We made a mistake. Yes, you did. I agreed. And it was the best thing you ever did for me, because it taught me exactly what I'm worth. And it's a lot more than $80. I pressed the intercom. Michael, please escort my guests out. Olivia, wait. My mother called as security approached. What about family? I met her eyes one last time. Family doesn't disown you over $80. Family doesn't come back only when you're worth millions. What you taught me that night wasn't about money. It was about value. My own value. And that's something I'll never let anyone discount again. After they left, I sat in my office as the sun set over the city. My phone kept buzzing with messages from relatives who had shunned me, now eager to reconnect. I turned it off. On my desk sat a framed dollar bill, the first revenue a live tech ever earned. Beside it, I placed the uncashed check I had written to my parents. 2 pieces of paper, 2 very different kinds of value. That night, as I walked through my empty penthouse, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. The $80 that costing my family had given me something far more valuable. It had given me myself. My company continued to grow, eventually expanding globally. The valuation kept climbing far beyond that initial $80 million. But I never forgot the lesson of that first $80. That sometimes the biggest gains come from what you refuse to give away. My parents never cashed the check. Last I heard, they had moved to a smaller house, still struggling with bills. Sometimes I wonder if they ever understood that the real cost of that $80 wasn't financial, it was the relationship they threw away. But I don't dwell on it. Instead, I focus on building something meaningful. Every quarter, Alive Tech donates thousands to organizations helping young entrepreneurs escape financial abuse. Every year, we fund scholarships for students who've been cut off by their families. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about helping others rise above. And sometimes, the smallest amount of money can lead to the biggest change in your life. All it takes is the courage to say no and the strength to face the consequences. In my case, it took $80 to learn I was worth millions, not in dollars, but in self-worth. And that's something no one can take away from me. The garage was my sanctuary. While the rest of the world saw a cluttered mess of circuit boards, soldering irons, and half-finished prototypes, I saw possibility. My name is Michael Chen, and for the past 5 years, I've spent every spare moment in this garage working on what my family lovingly called my bizarre obsession. Mike. My sister Sarah's voice cut through my concentration. Mom says dinner's ready, and please don't tell me you're still working on that thing. I carefully set down my soldering iron, looking at the device that had consumed thousands of hours of my life. It didn't look like much, just a small black box with a few blinking LEDs and a mess of wires. But I knew it could change everything. It's not just that thing, I replied, trying to keep the defensiveness out of my voice. It's going to revolutionize how artificial intelligence processes natural language. The applications could be endless. Sarah rolled her eyes, a gesture I'd grown painfully familiar with. Right, just like your self-adjusting tennis racket was going to revolutionize sports, or that smart garden system that flooded Mom's prized petunias. I winced at the memories. Yes, I'd have my share of failures, but this was different. This time I knew I was onto something big. At the dinner table, my father barely looked up from his phone as I tried to explain my latest breakthrough. He was a successful software engineer at a major tech company, which somehow made his dismissal sting even more. Neural network optimization through quantum-inspired algorithms, I explained, pushing my rice around the plate. It could make AI language processing 1,000 times more efficient. Honey, my mother interrupted gently, maybe it's time to focus on something more practical. The community college is still accepting applications for their AIT program. I have a degree in computer science from Stanford, I reminded her. I'm not looking for a career change. I'm trying to create something revolutionary. A degree you're wasting in that garage, my father finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of years of disappointment. Your cousin Jerry just got promoted to senior developer at Amazon. He's buying a house in Seattle. Meanwhile, you're burning through your savings on what? A black box that supposedly talks to computers. I pushed my chair back, appetite gone. It doesn't talk to computers. It fundamentally changes how AI systems process and understand human language. The potential applications in everything from healthcare to education are. Enough. My father's hand slammed on the table, making the dishes rattle. You're 32 years old, Michael. When are you going to grow up and join the real world? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. The real world is changing, Dad. Someone has to be crazy enough to push the boundaries, to try things that haven't been done before. And you think that someone is you? Sarah scoffed. The guy who couldn't even hold down a regular programming job. I left without responding, retreating to my garage sanctuary. They didn't understand. Couldn't understand. How could I explain that every failed prototype, every setback, every mockery-filled family dinner was just pushing me closer to a breakthrough? My hands trembled slightly as I picked up my tools again. The truth was, my savings were running dangerously low. I'd been living off my initial success, a small app I'd sold right out of college, but that money wouldn't last forever. The pressure to give up, to conform to their version of success, was mounting. But as I looked at my creation, watching the LEDs pulse with a steady rhythm, I knew I couldn't stop. Not now, not when I was so close. What my family didn't know was that I'd already achieved something unprecedented. The initial tests showed performance improvements that shouldn't have been possible according to current theoretical frameworks. I just needed more time, more resources, more. A notification popped up on my laptop. Another rejection email from a potential investor. This one hadn't even bothered with a meeting, just a form letter saying they weren't interested in speculative AI projects from independent developers. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling of my garage. Tomorrow, I had one last pitch meeting scheduled. A small tech investment firm I'd never heard of, probably another dead end. But I had to try, because if this didn't work, my father's words echoed in my head. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was just wasting my life, chasing an impossible dream while the real world passed me by. I shook my head, pushing the doubt away. No, I knew what I had created. I knew what it could do. Someone just needed to give me a chance to prove it. Little did I know, that chance was coming sooner than I thought, and from a direction I never could have predicted. But first, I had to survive another day of being a family disappointment. The crazy inventor who couldn't let go of his dreams. I turned back to my work, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of coding and testing. Outside my garage sanctuary, the world might doubt me, mock me, dismiss me. But in here, surrounded by the pieces of my vision, I was building the future, even if I was the only one who could see it. The next morning, I straightened my tie in the mirror, trying to look like someone worth investing millions in. The suit I wore was the same one I bought for my cousin Jerry's wedding 3 years ago, the last time I needed to dress formally. It felt tight around the shoulders now, probably from all those hours hunched over my workbench. Another pitch meeting. My mother's voice carried a mix of concern and resignation. She stood in the doorway of the bathroom, watching me struggle with my tie. You know, the software company where your father works is always hiring. They have great benefits, a 401. Mom, I cut her off gently. I appreciate the thought, but this is different. This meeting today, I have a good feeling about it. She sighed, stepping forward to fix my crooked tie. You always have a good feeling, Michael. Remember last month? That venture capital firm in San Francisco. I did remember. The senior partner had actually laughed out loud when I explained my technology. Son, he'd said, wiping tears from his eyes, if what you're claiming was possible, Google or Microsoft would have done it already. You really think you've solved something in your garage that their entire research teams couldn't. But today was different. It had to be. The investment firm's office was in a modest building on the outskirts of Silicon Valley, not exactly the gleaming skyscraper I'd imagined. The receptionist directed me to a small conference room where a single person waited, a woman about my age, dressed in a sharp business suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Mr. Chen, she extended her hand. I'm Julia Hayes. Thank you for coming in today. I set up my laptop and the prototype, hands slightly shaking. Before I begin, I should mention that what you're about to see goes beyond current theoretical frameworks for AI language processing. I know it might seem. Show me, she interrupted, her expression unreadable. I took a deep breath and began the demonstration. As I explained the technical architecture, Julia's face remained impassive. But when I ran the first test, showing how my system could process and understand complex linguistic patterns thousands of times faster than existing solutions, something changed in her eyes. Run that again, she said quietly. I did. This time, I added a more complex language sample, something that would stump most AI systems. My prototype processed it flawlessly. Julia leaned forward, her professional detachment cracking slightly. How did you solve the contextual ambiguity problem? I blinked, surprised. Most investors' eyes glazed over when I got into technical details. You understand the underlying challenges? A small smile played at her lips. Mr. Chen, there's something you should know about this firm. We're not typical investors. We're actually a subsidiary of. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her eyes widened. I'm sorry, but we need to pause. Something's come up. She stood abruptly. Please wait here. Before I could respond, she was gone, leaving me alone in the conference room. Minutes ticked by. Through the glass walls, I could see people hurrying past, an unusual energy in their movements. What was going on? After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, the door opened again. But it wasn't Julia who walked in. The man who entered was tall, slim, with silver hair and rimless glasses. He wore jeans and a simple black sweater, but something about his presence made me stand up automatically. He looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place him. Mr. Chen, he smiled, extending his hand. I apologize for the interruption. I'm Eric Schmidt. My knees went weak. Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, current technical advisor to Alphabet's board. When Julia sent me the preliminary data from your demonstration, I had to see for myself. He gestured to my prototype. Would you mind showing me exactly how your system handles semantic analysis? What followed was the most intense technical discussion of my life. Eric didn't just understand my technology, he grasped its implications instantly. Every question he asked showed a deep understanding of not just where AI was, but where it needed to go. The quantum-inspired processing architecture, he mused, examining my prototype. That's the key innovation, isn't it? But how did you overcome the coherence issues? I pulled up the technical specifications on my laptop, explaining the breakthrough that had come to me one sleepless night 6 months ago. Eric's eyes lit up. Brilliant, he whispered. Absolutely brilliant. He sat back, studying me with new intensity. Mr. Chen, what are your plans for this technology? I want to develop it further, I said. Scale it up, prove its potential in real-world applications. But I need funding, resources. Eric nodded slowly. What would you say to full access to Google's quantum computing resources, a dedicated research team, complete technical support? My heart started pounding. Are you saying? I'm saying we're very interested in acquiring your technology, Mr. Chen. Very interested indeed. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. When you say very interested, he wrote a number on a piece of paper and slid it across the table. I looked at it and forgot how to breathe. The number had 9 zeros after it. That's just the initial offer, Eric said quietly. We can discuss terms, of course, but we want to move quickly on this. Your breakthrough, it's exactly what we've been looking for. I stared at the number, my vision blurring slightly. It was more money than I'd ever imagined. More than enough to prove everyone wrong. To show my family that all those years in the garage hadn't been a waste. But something held me back from saying yes immediately. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the memory of all those nights working alone, believing in my vision when no one else did. I need to think about it, I heard myself say. Eric raised an eyebrow, but nodded. Of course. But please understand, Mr. Chen, you're not the only one working in this space. We're interested in your technology because you've solved a crucial problem. But others are close. I can give you 48 hours to decide. I gathered my prototype with trembling hands, barely remembering how I got out of the building. In my car, I sat staring at nothing, the piece of paper with a 90 number burning a hole in my pocket. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister. How'd the meeting go? Another bust? I started to type a response, then stopped. No, they needed to hear this in person. All of them. I started the car, my mind racing. Dinner at my parents' house was in a few hours. For once, I was actually looking forward to it. Sometimes success is the sweetest revenge. The cleaning cart's left wheels squeaked as I pushed it down the hallway of Sterling Financial's executive floor. Another late night, another round of empty offices to clean. The executives had all gone home hours ago, leaving behind their usual mess: coffee cups with lipstick stains, scattered papers, and carelessly dropped paper clips that I had to fish out from under their expensive desks. My name is Marcus Torres, though to the employees of Sterling Financial, I was just the janitor or sometimes hey you. They never bothered to learn my name, never looked me in the eye when they passed me in the hallways. To them, I was invisible, just another part of the building's machinery, like the elevators or the air conditioning. I pulled out my phone and checked the time, 8:45 p.m. Perfect. The night security guard wouldn't do his rounds on this floor for another 45 minutes. I had already memorized everyone's schedules, their patterns, their habits. You see, being invisible has its advantages. When people think you're nobody, they don't bother to hide anything from you. As I cleaned Bradley Thompson's office, Senior VP of Acquisitions, I could clearly see the documents scattered across his desk. Confidential merger plans, internal valuation reports, client lists. They never thought the janitor would understand what these papers meant, let alone use the information. But what they didn't know was that before I became their janitor, I had graduated summa cum laude from MIT with a double major in business and computer science. Not that it mattered. One market crash and a family medical emergency had wiped out my savings and left me with crushing debt. When you're desperate, you take whatever job you can get. That first year as a janitor had been humiliating. I still remember Jessica Moore from Human Resources walking past me in the break room, wrinkling her nose as she whispered to her colleague, "God, can't he afford better clothes? He always looks so shabby." I was wearing a cleaned and pressed uniform, the same one they required me to wear. But to them, everything about me looked shabby simply because I was the janitor. Then there was Michael Chin, the hotshot young trader who loved to show off. "Hey, cleaning guy," he called out one evening as I emptied his trash. Maybe if he'd studied harder in school, you wouldn't be scrubbing toilets for a living. His colleagues laughed, and I kept my head down, focusing on my work. What Michael didn't know was that at that very moment, one of my algorithms was executing trades worth millions of dollars through a shell company I had created. While they mocked me, I was building something that would change everything. It had started almost by accident. During those long nights cleaning the offices, I began noticing patterns in the documents I saw. Market trends, investment strategies, client behaviors. Being invisible meant I had access to every floor, every department. I saw the complete picture in a way that even the executives didn't. I started small, using my savings to make careful investments based on the patterns I observed. My background in computer science helped me create sophisticated algorithms that could analyze market data and execute trades automatically. Within 6 months, my initial $5,000 investment had grown to $50,000. That's when I formed Torres Ventures, though of course I wasn't listed anywhere as the owner. On paper, the company was run by a reclusive investor who never attended meetings in person. Everything was handled through layers of shell companies and virtual offices. I kept cleaning offices by day, building my empire by night. Every insult, every dismissive glance, every cruel joke just fueled my determination. They thought the janitor was taking a bus home because he couldn't afford a car. In reality, I was using that time to work on my trading algorithms on my laptop. "Look at him," I overheard Bradley Thompson say one day to his assistant. "No ambition, no drive. That's why some people never amount to anything in life." I had to bite back a smile. That same morning, Torres Ventures had closed a deal worth $12 million. My company was growing faster than I had ever imagined, but I wasn't ready to reveal myself. Not yet. I needed them to keep underestimating me, keep thinking I was nothing. Every night, after finishing my cleaning rounds, I would go to my small apartment and transform into a different person. I had set up a high-tech trading station hidden behind a false wall, multiple screens showing market data, powerful computers running my algorithms 24/7. This was my real office, not the janitor's closet they thought I operated from. By the third year, Taurus Ventures had grown into a significant player in the financial technology sector. We were known for our innovative trading algorithms and perfect timing in market movements. Speculation about the mysterious CEO was rampant in financial circles. Some thought it was a former Wall Street executive. Others believed it was a group of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. No one suspected the quiet janitor who cleaned their offices every night. Then came the day that would change everything. I was emptying Bradley Thompson's trash when I saw it. A confidential memo about Sterling Financial's impending collapse. The company had made a series of catastrophically bad investments, covering them up through creative accounting. They were weeks away from insolvency, and none of their employees knew. My first thought was about the regular workers, the receptionists, mail clerks, maintenance staff. People like me, at least as far as the executives were concerned. They would lose everything while the top executives probably had golden parachutes waiting. That night, in my hidden office, I made a decision. Taurus Ventures had grown into a $300 million company over the past 5 years. We had the resources to acquire Sterling Financial, restructure it, and save those jobs. But doing so would mean revealing myself. I spent the next week carefully planning every detail. Taurus Ventures began quietly buying up Sterling Financial's devalued stock through various subsidiaries. By the time Bradley Thompson realized what was happening, we owned 40% of the company. The morning everything changed started like any other. I pushed my cleaning cart down the hallway, listening to the panicked whispers. The entire executive floor was in chaos. Taurus Ventures now owns 51% of our shares. Bradley was shouting into his phone. How did we not see this coming? Who the hell is behind this company? I smiled to myself as I cleaned the windows, watching his reflection as he paced back and forth. Suddenly, Jessica from HR burst into his office, her face pale. The Taurus Ventures CEO is coming here. Today, they're calling an emergency board meeting at 2 p.m. Bradley slammed his phone down. Finally, I want to see who this mysterious bastard is who thinks they can take over my company. I finished my shift at noon, earlier than usual. Instead of taking the bus home, I walked to the luxury apartment building 2 blocks away where I kept my CEO wardrobe. The transformation took an hour, expensive suit, designer watch, perfectly styled hair. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. At exactly 2 p.m., I walked into Sterling Financial's main conference room. The entire board was there, along with key executives. Bradley Thompson sat at the front, his face set in a hostile glare. The CEO of Taurus Ventures, my assistant, announced. Yes, I had an assistant. She was one of the few people who knew my true identity. I watched their faces as I walked in, confusion at first, then disbelief. Jessica's mouth fell open. Michael Chen dropped his pen. Bradley Thompson stood up, his face turning red. This is some kind of joke, he sputtered. This is our janitor. I took my place at the head of the table, setting down my briefcase calmly. Marcus Torres, CEO of Taurus Ventures. And yes, until about 2 hours ago, I was also your janitor. The room erupted in chaos. People were shouting, demanding explanations. I held up my hand, and to my satisfaction, they fell silent. For 5 years, I began, my voice carrying across the stunned room. I cleaned your offices, I emptied your trash, I scrubbed your floors. And while you were all too busy looking down on me to notice, I built a company worth over $300 million. I turned to Michael Chen. You told me I should have studied harder in school. I graduated summa cum laude from MIT with a double major in business and computer science. His face went pale as several people turned to stare at him. Jessica, I continued, watching her shrink in her seat, you made fun of my shabby clothes. The watch I'm wearing right now costs more than your annual salary. But unlike you, I don't judge people by what they wear. Bradley Thompson had found his voice again. This is impossible. You're nothing but a janitor? I finished for him. Yes, I was. And that's exactly why I succeeded. Because you never suspected me. You never thought I could understand the documents I saw while cleaning your offices. You never thought I could build something bigger than anything you've achieved. I opened my briefcase and began distributing folders. Now let's discuss the real reason I'm here. I know of the cover-up, the bad investments, the impending collapse. I own 51% of Sterling Financial, which means I'm now in charge. The blood drained from Bradley's face. How did you? I saw everything, I said simply. When you think someone's invisible, you don't bother hiding things from them. I stood up, buttoning my jacket. There will be changes. First, all current non-executive employees will keep their jobs. The company will be restructured, but will protect the people who actually do the work around here. You can't do this, Bradley protested weakly. I smiled. I already have. Oh, and one more thing. The janitors, maintenance staff, and all other support personnel are getting an immediate 50% raise. It's amazing how much money you can find when you cut out excessive executive bonuses. Over the next few weeks, Sterling Financial transformed. I replaced most of the executive team with people who had actual skills rather than just connections. Bradley Thompson tried to sue, claiming I had obtained information illegally. But everything I'd done was completely legal. Being a janitor didn't mean I couldn't look at papers left in plain sight. The story of the janitor CEO made headlines. Suddenly, everyone wanted to interview me to learn how I built my company while working as a custodian. I turned down most requests, but I did agree to speak at a few universities, telling my story to students who might need to hear that success doesn't always follow a traditional path. Jessica tried to apologize, claiming she had never meant to be cruel. Michael Chen sent a long email explaining that his comments were just jokes. I didn't respond to either of them. Some bridges, once burned, shouldn't be rebuilt. 6 months later, Sterling Financial had been completely integrated into Torres Ventures. Our market value had doubled, and our innovative trading algorithms were revolutionizing the industry. I kept the janitor's closet where I used to store my cleaning supplies. It was converted into a small museum of sorts, displaying my old cleaning cart, uniform, and a photo of me from my days as the invisible janitor. Every new employee is required to visit that closet on their first day. It serves as a reminder that you never know who someone might be, what they might be capable of. Success doesn't always wear a suit and tie. Sometimes it pushes a cleaning cart and waits for the right moment to reveal itself. I still think about those years sometimes, about the people who looked right through me, who thought they were better than the quiet man who cleaned their offices. Their judgments, their mockery, their dismissive attitudes, all of it helped fuel my determination to succeed. Today, I'm known as one of the most innovative CEOs in the financial technology sector. Torres Ventures is valued at over $2 billion, and we're expanding into new markets every year. But I never forgot what it felt like to be invisible. That's why my company now has one unusual policy that surprises many people in the industry. Every executive, including me, spends one day each month working alongside our custodial staff. It's amazing how differently you treat people when you've walked in their shoes. Last week, I was back on the executive floor, not in a suit this time, but in a janitor's uniform. A young executive who was working late didn't recognize me and barely looked up as I emptied his trash. I smiled to myself, wondering if he knew that the cleaning guy he was ignoring could buy and sell his entire career without blinking. But I didn't say anything. After all, being underestimated had served me well. Sometimes the best success stories are written by the people no one sees coming. The day of my father's reading started like any other at Harrison & Associates law firm. Leather chairs, mahogany tables, and the distinct scent of old money that permeated the air. I sat quietly, my black dress still wrinkled from the funeral, while my brother Michael lounged in his Italian suit, radiating confidence. I had spent the last week in a fog of grief, barely eating, barely sleeping. My father, brilliant entrepreneur, dedicated parent, my biggest supporter, was gone. Meanwhile, Michael had spent that same week throwing parties at his penthouse, celebrating his upcoming promotion as he called it. "Let's begin," Mr. Harrison said, adjusting his reading glasses. The elderly lawyer had handled our family's legal affairs for 30 years. He unfolded a document, cleared his throat, and started reading. I, James William Porter, being of sound mind. I tried to focus on the words, but my mind kept drifting to my last conversation with Dad. It was just 3 weeks ago, over dinner at his favorite steakhouse. Emma, he had said, his eyes twinkling despite his illness. I've watched you build your consulting business from scratch. No handouts, no favors. Just pure determination. You remind me so much of myself at your age. He had reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I've made arrangements. Everything's taken care of. You'll be able to expand your business, help more people. Just promise me you'll keep building, keep growing. I had promised, tears in my eyes, not knowing those would be our last moments together. Mr. Harrison's voice snapped me back to reality. And to my daughter Emma Porter, I leave. He stopped abruptly, frowning at the paper. Something flickered across his face, confusion, then concern. This can't be right, he muttered, shuffling through the papers. Michael leaned forward, his smile sharp as a razor. Is there a problem? According to this document, Mr. Harrison said slowly, the entire estate, including Porter Enterprises and all associated assets, approximately valued at $12 million, is to be transferred solely to Michael Porter. The room started spinning. That's impossible, I whispered. The document clearly states, Michael cut in smoothly, that Dad believed I was the only one capable of running his legacy. He pulled out a folded paper from his breast pocket. I have a copy right here, if you'd like to verify. Mr. Harrison accepted the paper, comparing it to his own. The signatures match, but what? Michael challenged. Everything's in order, unless you're suggesting our father wasn't of sound mind. I stared at my brother, the stranger wearing designer clothes and a triumphant smirk. Dad would never do this, I said. He told me himself he'd made arrangements. Michael's laugh cut through the air like broken glass. Oh, sweet knave Emma. Always Daddy's little girl, weren't you? Did you really think he'd trust his life's work to someone who plays with spreadsheets in a tiny office? You don't deserve this inheritance. You never did. Michael. Mr. Harrison interjected. Your sister's consulting firm has shown remarkable growth. A consulting firm? Michael scoffed. Please, she helps small businesses with their accounting. It's glorified bookkeeping. Porter Enterprises needs a real leader. I sat there, numb, as Mr. Harrison continued reading the details. Every property, every account, every share of the company, all going to Michael. Even Dad's vintage car collection, which he and I had restored together during my teenage years. When the reading finished, Michael stood up, buttoning his jacket. Well, this has been enlightening. Emma, I'll need you to clear out your office at Porter Enterprises by the end of the week. Can't have former employees hanging around, bad for morale. I had been working part-time at our father's company since college, learning the business from the ground up while building my own firm. Now Michael was erasing that too. Mr. Harrison, I said quietly, may I see the will? The lawyer handed it over, sympathy in his eyes. The signature looked perfect, every loop, every curve exactly like Dad's. But something felt wrong. The words weren't his style, the tone too formal, too cold. One more thing, Michael announced from the doorway. I'm selling the lake house. My head snapped up. You can't. Mom loved that house. Dad promised he'd never sell it. Dad's not here anymore, is he? Michael's smile was cruel. And technically, it's my house now. I'm thinking of turning it into a private club. Much better investment than keeping it as some sort of shrine. He walked out, leaving me alone with Mr. Harrison in the suddenly too quiet office. Emma, the lawyer said gently, something isn't right here. Your father discussed his plans with me several times over the years. This will. It contradicts everything he ever said. I ran my fingers over the signature, remembering all the times I'd watched Dad sign documents in his office. The signature's perfect, I murmured. Too perfect. Mr. Harrison leaned forward. What do you mean? Dad's hands shook in his final months. The medication made it worse. This signature, I traced the smooth lines. There's no tremor, not even a slight one. The lawyer's eyes widened. Are you suggesting? I need to make some calls, I said, standing up. And I need copies of every document Michael submitted since Dad got sick. That night, I sat in my apartment, my sanctuary away from the Porter family drama, surrounded by papers. Business records, bank statements, correspondence. I was looking for a pattern, a clue, anything that would explain how my brother had managed to steal my inheritance. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Cleaning crew comes to your office tomorrow. Better hurry if you want to keep your little plants." I ignored it, focusing instead on my laptop screen. Something caught my eye, a string of large transfers from Porter Enterprises to offshore accounts, all within the last 3 months. The amounts were carefully structured to avoid immediate suspicion, but together they painted a disturbing picture. My brother hadn't just stolen my inheritance. He'd been embezzling from the company for months, possibly years. A plan began forming in my mind. I thought about my consulting firm, about the connections I'd built, the trust I'd earned in the business community. Michael saw it as glorified bookkeeping, but what he didn't understand was that I had access to something he never would: the loyalty of small business owners who formed the backbone of our city's economy. I picked up my phone and dialed a number. "David, it's Emma Porter. Remember that investment opportunity we discussed? I'm ready to move forward. But first, I need your help with something." The game was about to change, and Michael had no idea what was coming. 5 years passed like a whirlwind. While Michael paraded around the city as Porter Enterprises' new CEO, I worked silently, methodically, building something he could never imagine. The day everything changed started with a phone call. "Miss Porter?" My assistant's voice was tinged with amusement. "Your brother is here for his interview." I smiled, remembering Michael's desperate email from last week. He'd applied to Phoenix Consulting Group, my company, not knowing I was the founder and CEO. After running Porter Enterprises into the ground, he was now begging for a job at what had become one of the city's most successful firms. "Send him in," I said, turning my chair to face the floor-to-ceiling windows. "And Lisa? Make sure the security team is recording." The door opened. I heard his footsteps, no longer confident strides in Italian leather shoes, but hesitant steps in what sounded like department store loafers. "Please take a seat," I said, still facing the windows. "Thank you for seeing me." Michael's voice had lost its arrogant edge. "I've heard incredible things about Phoenix Consulting. Your growth over the past 5 years is unprecedented." I slowly turned my chair around. The look on his face was worth every second of the past 5 years. "Hello, Michael." He nearly fell out of his chair. "Emma? What? How?" "Surprised to see your glorified bookkeeper sister running a $200 million company?" I asked pleasantly. His face went through a series of emotions: shock, confusion, anger, fear. "This is impossible. Phoenix Consulting Group is mine," I finished. "Built from scratch after you stole my inheritance. Ironic, isn't it? You thought Dad's company was the prize. But I built something worth far more." He tried to recover, straightening his cheap tie. "Well, this is wonderful. Families should stick together. I always knew you had potential." "Save it," I cut him off. "Let's talk about why you're really here. Porter Enterprises is failing, isn't it? The offshore accounts are empty. The investors are asking questions." The color drained from his face. "How did you?" I opened a folder on my desk. 5 years ago, you thought you were so clever with your forged will and embezzled funds. But you forgot one thing. I'm actually good with numbers." I laid out documents one by one. Bank transfers, forged signatures, proof of systematic fraud. While you were busy playing CEO, I was building a network of the city's most influential small business owners. People you considered beneath you. They trusted me with their books, their secrets, their connections. And they were happy to help when I asked them to keep an eye on Porter Enterprises transactions. Michael slumped in his chair. "What do you want?" "Want?" I laughed. "I don't want anything from you. But the SEC might be interested in these documents, and the police will definitely want to talk about Dad's forged will." "You can't prove anything," he said, but his voice shook. I pressed a button on my desk phone. "Mr. Harrison, would you join us?" The door opened, and our father's old lawyer walked in, carrying a briefcase. "Actually, she can prove everything," Mr. Harrison said. "I've spent 5 years gathering evidence. Your father suspected you were embezzling. That's why he changed his will 2 weeks before he died. The real will, not your forged version." He pulled out a document. "This is the authentic will, signed and notarized at the hospital. I kept it safe until Emma had built enough protection around herself. Your father left the company to both of you equally, but with a condition. Emma would have controlling interest because he trusted her judgment." Michael lunged for the document, but security was faster. 2 guards appeared instantly, their presence commanding respect. "Don't embarrass yourself further," I said quietly. It's over. You've ruined everything, he spat. You and Dad never understood. I deserve that company. No, Michael. You deserve this moment, watching everything crumble because of your own greed. Dad knew exactly what you were. That's why he made arrangements to protect his legacy from you. I stood up, smoothing my designer dress, worth more than Michael's entire outfit. The SEC will be here in 20 minutes. I suggest you use that time to decide how cooperative you want to be. You can't do this. I'm your brother. You stopped being my brother the day you forged Dad's will. Family isn't about blood, Michael. It's about trust, respect, and integrity, 3 things you never understood. As security escorted him out, I turned to Mr. Harrison. Thank you for everything. He smiled warmly. Your father would be so proud, Emma, not just of your success, but of how you achieved it, through hard work and integrity. Later that evening, I drove to the lake house, my lake house now, the property reclaimed along with everything else Michael had stolen. The sunset painted the water in shades of gold, just like when Mom was alive. My phone buzzed with news alerts. Porter Enterprises hair arrested for fraud. Phoenix Consulting Group CEO reveals family drama behind business success. Emma Porter, from disinherited daughter to business empire builder. I smiled, remembering Dad's words. Keep building, keep growing. I had kept my promise, but in my own way. Instead of inheriting a legacy, I had built one. The next morning, I walked into my office to find it buzzing with energy. Our latest acquisition, Porter Enterprises, would need restructuring. The company Dad built would survive, but under new leadership, guided by the values he had taught me. On my desk, I found an old photo of Dad and me working on his vintage Mustang. Behind it stood my team, the family I had chosen, people who shared my vision and values. Ready for the board meeting? Lisa asked, tablet in hand. I looked around at the empire I had built, so much greater than the inheritance I had lost. More than ready. Michael's arrest made headlines for weeks. The evidence was overwhelming, not just the forged will and embezzlement, but years of fraud and deception. He faced significant prison time. But my focus was on the future. Phoenix Consulting Group continued to grow, now helping businesses across the country. The lake house became a retreat for employees and their families, and Dad's vintage car collection, restored to its former glory, each car a reminder of the lessons he taught me. 1 year later, I received a letter from Michael, written from prison. He begged for forgiveness, for a job when he got out, for another chance at being family. I wrote a simple response. The greatest inheritance Dad left wasn't his money or his company. It was his integrity. That's something you can't steal, and something you never understood. Good luck with your rehabilitation. Today, Phoenix Consulting Group is valued at over $500 million. The story of how I built it, after losing my inheritance to a greedy brother, has become a legend in business circles. But the real victory isn't in the numbers. It's in the legacy I built, the people I've helped, and the values I've upheld. Sometimes, losing an inheritance is just the push you need to build something far greater than what you lost. Dad always said success wasn't about what you were given, but what you built with your own hands. Looking at my empire now, I know he was right. Michael may have stolen my inheritance, but he inadvertently pushed me to create something far more valuable, a legacy of my own. And that's something no one can ever take away.